asking the questions that matter, lighting the fire to scatter, dancing with thoughts that flatter, building the dreams we chase after. Whispers are turning to thunder, echoes are pulling us under, fascism spark in the night, guiding us into the light, exercising the mind so bright, smarticle particles take flight. Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Thank you for joining me here at Tazisms as we continue to go through Epstein Maxwell files updates. Well, we got. Oh shoot! Not a day goes by that something doesn't drop. Soon as let's just jump right in. Today, Hillary Rodham Clinton has her deposition regarding the Oversight Committee. Remember, this is Republican led. She and Bill were previously used to do this, and they wanted everything to be out in the open and public. We're going to get into that. This will be taped behind closed doors, and it will be released in its entirety, according to the GOP-led committee, at a later date. Clinton requested that the deposition be public. According to the chair of the committee, James Comer, he said, and I quote, "We're going to release the transcripts, release the video as soon as everyone approves it." Okay. He also went on to say, and I quote, "No one has accused the Clintons of wrongdoing." He says that they are, and I quote, "trying to understand many things." So when are we getting Woody Allen? When are you going to ask Sarah Ferguson to come in? We know that King Charles has told his younger brother, not so Randy these days, Andy, to speak. So when are you going to make time for him? Inquiring minds would like to know. Comer also said that the depositions of the Clintons, Hillary today and Bill tomorrow, will be very long. He said that every few hours, someone from the committee will come out and update the press / the public and take questions. He was very specific on the take questions. So I don't know how many of these questions will actually be answered, but we shall see. I guess we will try to keep hope alive with this one. Now, starting from that, Hillary Clinton excoriates Republicans, says she has no new information in closed-door testimony. Hillary Clinton rebuked congressional Republicans today over their move to subpoena her for testimony in the Epstein investigation rather than key figures who had direct links to the late convicted sex offender. In her opening statement for the House Oversight Committee's closed-door deposition in New York, Clinton said the panel decided to subpoena her testimony based on its assumption that I have information regarding the investigations into the criminal activities of Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell. Let me be as clear as I can. I do not. As I stated in my sworn declaration on January 13th, I had no idea about their criminal activities, she said in a statement shared on X. I do not recall ever encountering Mr. Epstein. I never flew on his plane or visited his islands, homes, or offices. I have nothing to add to that. Clinton accused the GOP lawmakers of conducting their investigation in a way that was designed to protect one political party and one public official. And here's the thing, before you all go on to say, but she was married to Bill, and Bill was photographed, blah, blah, blah. Everybody does not know everybody's friends. Everybody does not hang out with everybody's people. And you all will sit there and admit that Hillary Rodham Clinton has her own friends, her own life, then you all will insinuate that they are in a business transactional lavender marriage, but then sit there and act like this woman is supposed to know everything. I need y'all to ask yourself why you believe in society that women need to be parented by their male partners, but they're supposed to somehow mother the hell out of these grown men. And y'all act as if your parents knew everything that you did on top of it. Why do we hold women so responsible for everything on this planet, but then act like women can't do shit? And it's amazing that when it comes to women like Hillary Rodham Clinton, you're like, oh, well, she should know, she should know. But the women who were involved in the recruiting, involved in the abuse, involved in covering up the abuse, you paint them as the victim. Make it make sense. Instead, you have compelled me to testify, fully aware that I have no knowledge that would assist your investigation in order to distract attention from President Trump's actions and to cover them up despite legitimate calls for answers, Clinton said. If this committee is serious about learning the truth about Epstein's trafficking crimes, it would not rely on press gaggles to get answers from our current president on his involvement. It would ask him directly under oath about the tens of thousands of times he shows up in the Epstein files, she said. Trump, like the Clintons, has never been charged with any wrongdoing connected to Epstein and has denied any wrongdoing. And that's the thing. Even Trump's own chief of staff, Susie Wiles, in a plethora of interviews, has stated, you're barking up the wrong tree when it comes to Clinton. It's a waste of time. She's called it bad handling. But let's get into this because there's a lot to get through today. They kept the worst stuff. House lawmaker makes explosive accusation on DOJ Epstein drop. Representative Ro Khanna, Democrat out of California, uncorked explosive claims Wednesday about stonewalling from the Justice Department, claiming the Trump administration kept the worst documents from the public eye. In an interview with Raw Story, Khanna said the House Oversight Committee is proceeding with Clinton depositions and is coordinating a legal strategy with federal prosecutors in New York to compel the release of restricted documents. It's a drip-by-drip thing on accountability, he said, suggesting a prolonged battle ahead. When pressed about whether the White House and President Donald Trump Sr.'s DOJ are defying Congress and the law, Khanna noted the release was incomplete but damaging. These released files, they released half the files, but they've kept the worst stuff, Khanna stated bluntly, warning that this is not going away. On the critical question of whether courts will serve as a safeguard against government overreach, Khanna expressed a cautious optimism mixed with realism. Let's not forget that in order historically to gain any type of change in this country, and I say it across so many different platforms to people, it has to be a combination of litigation, legislation, and activism with education. So this is why I say to people, stop saying that the federal government is not doing anything, that the federal government is trying to cover for this. No, some Trump lackeys, most notably Todd Blanche and Pam Bondi, are trying to cover for this. And we know the sprinkling throughout the GOP that's trying to cover for this. But if it wasn't for a good chunk of the federal government, we wouldn't be as far along as we are now. Stop giving up. Stop rewriting history and downplaying yourself. You all are giving way too much credit to certain people and not enough credit to what's actually going on. Whew. Okay, I don't know what happened there, but that's not loading. Let's try this one more time. That's odd. It's very odd. Okay. come back to that update in a minute. Epstein survivor slams FBI chief Kash Patel for partying like a college kid at Olympics instead of investigating Epstein's network. Um, Now, it's not often that I go through the comment sections over here. Generally, I notice comments while live and I will address comments while live. Other than that, I usually don't go back. But I did see some people trying to defend Kasha Patel. He's a public servant. Talking about, well, he does have a personal life. That's cool. Let his personal finances pay for his personal life. When he's supposed to be doing the work of the people and he's on the clock and we're footing the bill, he's our employee. It's amazing that so many people are like, well, he has a personal life, but you don't believe that your child's teacher should have a personal life, huh? Okay. Danny Binsky, who said she was a victim of sex offender Jeffrey Epstein between 2004 and 2005, is calling out Kash Patel for partying like a college kid instead of investigating Epstein's vast criminal enterprise. After the FBI director, 46, was pictured drinking a beer and celebrating alongside the U.S. men's hockey team following their win over Canada at the 2026 Milan Cortina Winter Olympics, Binsky shared her opinion that his administration needs to do better in a February 24th news conference hosted by the Democratic Women's Caucus. And let me add this caveat. Kash Patel, before you all go, well, he has the right to be over there. He used the FBI official jet to go over there. He went over there in his official capacity as FBI director. Why is the FBI director out there partying like a college kid when he should be investigating the vast criminal enterprise? She asked. This administration needs to do better. How can anyone feel safe in this country when our president's sympathies are going to the former Prince Andrew and not to survivors? And that goes to the person who has been all through my comment section going, God bless Trump for keeping the world safe. I don't think y'all understand jurisdictions, and I don't think you understand the definition of safe. President Donald Trump Sr. called the arrest of former President Donald Trump Sr. called the arrest of former Prince Andrew a very sad thing after he was taken into police custody on suspicion of misconduct in public office on February 19th. Isn't it amazing that Trump Sr. always has compassion for criminals? He has a bleeding heart when accountability comes to the criminals. He will call any and everybody else a miscreant, dastardly, shithole, all of these things. But the people who are pulled in front of the courts for due process with overwhelming evidence against them, that's where his sympathy lies. There are a few things that really need to be done immediately versus the release of all the files, which we know, Binsky continued. Next is to hold accountable those who continuously exploit. And the third is to pass Virginia's bill. We need to pass Virginia's bill because justice should never, ever expire. Release the damn files. And I agree with this. I have struggled ever since I learned as a teenager. It was the summer between my sophomore and junior year in high school, that what statute of limitations meant. I could understand putting a limitation on the prosecution of theft. If somebody stole a bracelet from me and 60 years later, the bracelet shows up on the wrist of somebody who had no idea that it was stolen and it eventually got to them, no, that person shouldn't be prosecuted. That I understand. But I have struggled to understand why someone, or a collection of someone's, I should say, came together and said intimate crimes should have a ticker on them. I've never understood that. I understand the words that were put together in defense of it, but and the older I've gotten, the more I'm like, this doesn't make sense. Because there are some people who will hide. There's some people that will push stuff off and convince people of all sorts of things until they can't be criminally liable. And people don't tend to care about punitive damages as much as you think. The Virginia's law bill, named in honor of Epstein accuser Virginia Giuffre, who died by suicide in 2025, was introduced by congressional Democrats in February to end the statute of limitations for civil sexual abuse cases. Following the Team USA victory, which marked the men's hockey team's first Olympic gold since 1980, videos of Patel partying with the athletes in their locker room while chugging a beer and singing along to Toby Keith's courtesy of the Red, White, and Blue made their rounds on social media. And yet there are people who still believe that the globe respects the United States. The United States doesn't even respect a smidgen of their residents and citizens. Now, when I said we are going to be looking at all sides of all things regarding this and anything, I meant that. For you, absolutely. Text messages show Democrat governor was helping Jeffrey Epstein months before his 2019 arrest. Just months before his 2019 arrest for child sex crimes, Jeffrey Epstein was being held by U.S. Virgin Islands Governor Albert Bryan Jr., Democrat, with a conflict regarding unauthorized construction on his pedophile island, Little St. James, according to text messages reviewed by CNN. Jeffrey Epstein had a thing for the Virgin Islands and using the people there, which is interesting because of his level of racism and his, dare I say, obsession with eugenics. After Epstein was ordered to stop unauthorized construction on Little St. James and Great St. James in the U.S. Virgin Islands, the serial sex offender went to Bryan for help, the network reported. Text messages from 2019 reviewed by CNN show Bryan, a Democrat, telling Epstein that he had spoken with the territory's top environmental official and asked him to pause enforcement until they could dismiss Andrew Kaczynski on Wednesday. As Epstein complained about possible mounting fines and negative press coverage, Bryan later wrote that he had asked the commissioner overseeing the case to recuse himself and concede on all previous permit requests. In one text message to Epstein, the Democratic governor wrote, "We got you." In another exchange, after Epstein asked Bryan whether he could spare 15 minutes, the governor quickly responded, "For you, absolutely." The text messages took place just a few months before Epstein was arrested on charges of sex trafficking minors. Epstein was found dead in his New York jail cell just 1 month after the arrest. Questioned under oath in 2023 about whether he ever provided special treatment to Epstein as governor, Bryan repeatedly answered no. I will say one thing for certain, two things for sure. The Epstein Maxwell files has proven one thing: the old adage, what is done in the dark will come to light. According to victim testimony, Epstein routinely trafficked underage girls to wealthy and powerful guests on his island, Little St. James, earning it the moniker Pedophile Island in the media. Now, we discussed one side of this story previously. You can look back through the playlist and go to that episode. It's detailed in the description where you can find it. Let's look at the other side, because there are people who truly believe that due to political affiliations, familial affiliations, that there are some people who just ascribe to protect, because we got to protect the family name. We got to protect the reputation of the party. Everybody is not like that. And a lot of you all that feel that everybody is like that, you are projecting because you want to believe that you ascribe to the normalcy of society. So you have to force yourself to believe that everybody does things and believes things in the exact way that you do. Everybody does. I told you, I've been very open about my own story. Somebody that used to be very near and dear to my heart, I found out that they was diddling kids, and baby, let me tell you, I set out the alarm. Baby, until they were prosecuted and locked away. People could come up to me and go, "Oh, I like your shirt." I was telling them, showing them the pictures, giving them the details, the whole nine. I don't give a damn about protecting a dastardly image. Okay? Okay, now let's get into this next part. J.B. Pritzker calls for accountability after cousin Thomas's Epstein files controversy. Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker issued a call for accountability to those associated with late sex offender Jeffrey Epstein after his cousin, Thomas Pritzker, appeared in files released by the DOJ. Look, I've said from the beginning that anyone that's done something wrong needs to be held accountable, the politician said on All In with Chris Hayes Wednesday evening. And I really mean anyone. Now, I'm not close to my cousin, but I can tell you that it's very important that people be held to pay the price for whatever it is they may have done. Hey, there's a particular set of brothers out of New York that need to hear this. There are people who ascribe to a particular faction within a particular political party that need to hear this. Y'all keep calling for other people to hold folks accountable, to question other people because they're related, because they're in the same political party, because they work at the same company, because they used to live on the same block. Why aren't you doing the same? JB went on All In with Chris Hayes to speak with the MS Now pundit in the wake of Donald Trump Sr.'s State of the Union address. Hayes soon turned the conversation, however, to the governor's cousin, who stepped down from the Hyatt board, where he served as executive chairman for more than 20 years, in mid-February after details of his affiliation with Epstein became public. You are from one of the, I would say, most storied families in America, particularly in American business, which comes with its own kind of, I think, privileges and burdens, Hayes said before pointing to Thomas's association with the sex trafficker. Epstein documents released by the U.S. Department of Justice showed a long-time correspondence between Thomas and Epstein, including invitations to various meetups and events. Like I said, we went through this quite detailed. Regarding his involvement with Epstein, what he was saying, all that jazz. But let's take a look.
You are from one of the, I would say, most storied families.
Okay. Why are we? There we go.
You are from one of the, I would say, most storied families in American, particularly in American business, which comes with its own kind of, I think, privileges and burdens. A cousin of yours has been in the news with regards to the Epstein files, Thomas Pritzker. He just recently resigned from the board of the Hyatt company after a bunch of emails and correspondences and associations that he had with Jeffrey Epstein, Ghislaine Maxwell, after Epstein did prison time in 2008. He apologized for that association. I'm wondering what your reaction to that is.
Look, I've said from the beginning that anyone that's done something wrong needs to be held accountable. And I really mean anyone. I'm not close to my cousin, but I can tell you that it's very important that people be held to pay the price for whatever it is that they may have done. And I know there are lots of names in there, and some people just sent a few emails or whatever and had nothing to do with any of the wrongdoing, but there's a whole lot of people that have seemingly done something wrong. So once again, they are the ones who should be answering. They should be answering questions. And, as you've seen, you saw, I think Larry Summers is, just resigned from the board of Harvard just recently because of, what seemingly he may have done. So I think we're going to see a lot more of that. And I want to see complete transparency. I think everyone that had anything to do with Jeffrey Epstein or Ghislaine Maxwell, all that information needs to come out, and then, we'll sift through, who's actually done something wrong.
All right, Governor Brister, great to have you here.
Good to see you, Chris.
My apologies. Like I said, that's how it should be. And for those that have this thing that, oh, you're being partisan. No, I go where the information takes me. I don't draw political lines. Everybody can get it and has gotten it over here. All right. Democrats asked Pam Bondi if Trump is under active investigation related to Epstein. Democrats are pressing Attorney General Pam Bondi for the reason the Justice Department has withheld documents potentially related to an FBI investigation into an accusation of sexual misconduct by President Donald Trump Sr. decades ago. In response to public pressure, the Justice Department said Wednesday it's currently reviewing whether to add the material to its public database for documents from its investigation of sex trafficker Jeffrey Epstein. The department previously insisted this week that the only material it withheld was either duplicative, contained material subject to attorney-client privilege or was part of an ongoing federal investigation. Representative Robert Garcia out of California, a Democrat, the top Democrat on the House Oversight Committee, said the missing FBI forms recounting agent interviews with a woman who said Trump sexually abused her as a minor shouldn't be privileged and certainly weren't duplicates. The only option that they have left is that President Trump Sr. is under a federal investigation, Garcia told HuffPost on Tuesday, which is true because that is the one time that legally you can say that you cannot release these documents to the public. And if that is the case and they want to say that before you go, but Taz, they can say that, and then there has to be a report at the end of it with their findings in detail, including people that they interviewed, explanations as to what evidence they looked at and why they concluded to prosecute or not to prosecute, which opens them all up to litigation themselves and being censured. In a letter to Bondi on Wednesday, Garcia said he independently confirmed that the department has withheld the FBI files by reviewing the unredacted files in an office set up for members of Congress. He warned it would be improper to use a sham investigation as a pretext to keep Epstein material secret. Alternatively, and even more seriously, if DOJ is actively investigating allegations of sexual abuse leveled against President Trump by an Epstein survivor, Congress and the American people have the right to know immediately, Garcia wrote. The independent journalist Roger Sollenberger first raised questions about the FBI forms earlier this month, noting serial numbers reflecting the existence of the forms on a list of non-testifying witness material from the government's case against Epstein accomplice Ghislaine Maxwell. The list suggests the FBI repeatedly interviewed an Epstein victim who also said she was abused by Trump in the 1980s, but there's a form from only one interview with the victim in the department's public Epstein library. First NPR, then HuffPost, and other news outlets picked up this story this week. In a social media statement on Wednesday, the Justice Department acknowledged the questions about potentially missing documents. Several individuals and news outlets have recently flagged files related to documents produced to Ghislaine Maxwell in discovery of her criminal case that they claim appeared to be missing, the statement said. As with all documents that have been flagged by the public, the department is currently reviewing files within the category of the production. Should any document be found to have been improperly tagged in the review process and is responsive to the act, the department will, of course, publish it consistent with the law. An attorney for Maxwell did not respond when asked on Wednesday if he had the documents. In one summary of the FBI interview, the woman that's available in the database, she describes Epstein recruiting her work as a babysitter at a South Carolina vacation property when she was in her early teens. The interview was conducted in 2019 as the government was building its sex trafficking case against Epstein, and it doesn't mention misconduct by Trump. The woman's basic biographical details match those of another FBI source, however, who told investigators a lurid anecdote about Trump forcing her into a sex act and violently assaulting her in the early 1980s. Democrats say the other FBI forms may reflect an investigation into that incident. And the DOJ has further gone on to say that they are reviewing whether any Epstein records withheld after reports of missing documents related to Trump. Now, here we go. Now, I want you all to pay close attention to this video.
This is crazy. So, two of the biggest stories in the news right now are Jeffrey Epstein and our so-called immigration enforcement system, right? The Guardian just dropped a bombshell that connects them directly. The documents just released by the Justice Department, the over 3 million pages dumped under the Epstein Files Transparency Act, they show that Jeffrey Epstein had cultivated a cozy personal relationship with at least 6 Customs and Border Protection officers, the very agents responsible for inspecting who came and went from his private island. Epstein brought countless women and girls, as we know, to that island. And I want to be specific here because the details of how he got away with it are wild. He tracked which CBP officers were on duty before he flew in. He texted them holiday greetings. He had one officer come to his island to perform steel pan drums as a personal entertainer. He gave another financial advice. One officer later said, quote, "It felt good that little me was getting tips from a billionaire." And one officer, a supervisory CBP officer named James Heil, Epstein texted him on Christmas Eve that he had just landed with cannolis and asked for his home address so his driver could deliver them. Heil texted back, "Thank you, old friend. The family's thrilled." Old friend. That is a federal border agent talking to a convicted sex offender. In return, according to the records, Epstein got what investigators called concierge service through customs. Officers whisked him through inspections. They helped him troubleshoot problems at mainland airports. And when agents did question his passengers, some with foreign passports, some with pending asylum applications, Epstein would personally call Heil to complain. Heil would follow up with the other officers on Epstein's behalf. Let that sink in. A Customs and Border Patrol supervisor was running interference against his own agents who were doing their jobs correctly, screening Epstein's passengers because Epstein texted him to. And now here's the part that should make you furious. The FBI and the Department of Homeland Security investigated this for over a year. Grand jury subpoenas went out. At least 4 officers were named. There were allegations of conspiracy to defraud the U.S. government. 0 charges, not one. And now, 6 years after Epstein's death, we're only finding this out because of a transparency law that forced the document release. And those documents are still heavily redacted. Victims' families still don't have answers. So let me leave you with this. The same administration that is right now telling you that CBP and ICE need more power, fewer restrictions, less oversight, that's the same administration that has shown 0 interest in holding a single one of those officers accountable. Not one. They want you afraid of the people crossing the border. They don't want you asking who was waving Jeffrey Epstein through it. Shameful.
Now let's get into the article. Revealed Epstein cultivated relationship with CBP officer causing U.S. investigation. Guardian review of U.S. Justice Department files reveals Epstein interacted with 6 CBP officers. The officer investigated denied any knowledge of trafficking underage girls. Federal investigators examined Jeffrey Epstein's relationship with a Customs and Border Protection (CBP) officer who worked at the St. Thomas airport, to which Epstein regularly flew on his private planes before traveling by boat or helicopter to his private island. Newly released documents revealed. As a part of that investigation, which did not result in any charges, investigators also issued subpoenas related to 3 additional CBP officers working at the Cyril E. King Airport, STT, on St. Thomas, documents show. The Guardian also identified 2 other CBP officers on St. Thomas and in Florida who were in contact with Epstein, based on emails and text messages between Epstein, his staff, and the officers. It does not appear the FBI ever investigated those 2 officers. The FBI in New York opened a preliminary investigation in October 2019 after receiving a report that a long-serving CBP agricultural inspector had an ongoing friendship with Mr. Epstein while working for CBP pre-clearance in St. Thomas for over 7 years. The email establishing the investigation into the agricultural inspector, Timothy Bill Rauch, is among the millions of files related to Epstein's crimes that were released by the Department of Justice, the DOJ, this month. Federal authorities interviewed Epstein's longtime pilot about the convicted sex offender's contacts with CBP agents. Now, before we go further, I want to remind you all of something. There was a conversation held that was sparked earlier on GCPR's own The Sound of Coffee, hosted by Tom and the Village Bishop, talking about the power and the freedom from accountability that wealth offers. And it made me remember something. And he also talked about, that some people change when they have money. And I thought about something. There are people, they don't necessarily change because they have money. They now have the freedom to be who they've always been out in the open, number one. Number two, it's not really the money that's intimidating or the people that wield their money as power. It's the general public, the non-wealthy, that use their fantasies and their, well, if I had this, I would do that, to intimidate and stifle and silence themselves. And people are too impressed by money because, once again, they're putting themselves in that position as to what they would do, and them believing that proximity means that windfall is just right around the river bend to becoming theirs. And I think far too many people either have forgotten or they don't know the incredible imposter syndrome that Jeffrey Epstein lived with. Let me remind you all, he was not qualified for any position he held other than being a creepy pedo. He kept putting himself in rooms, hoping that the proximity rubbed off on him. He enjoyed taking power and control over the powerful. So he understood the fangirling that would go on. Am I able to believe that some of these agents had no idea that there was trafficking going on? Yes, depending on their positions and their physical, their ability to physically see the people that they're vouching for. Because going through this, looking at the messages, reading the article before this, there's a lot of, they got a text message, they got a phone call, a lot of, they didn't really see these people. And they thought, oh, I'm helping the guy out, he'll help me out. Let's not forget, Jeffrey Epstein was good at selling people a bill of rights, making people, he was good at selling dreams, making people believe that he would eventually help them out, that they would gain close to his stature with his help. He made people believe that they were his friend. And let's not forget how many people that is so intoxicating for. And yet again, let me put this out here. No, I'm not making excuses for anybody. No, I'm not giving anybody a shield. I'm not putting out their extra narratives. I'm saying we have to look at things in full context so that we can see the truth and not be tainted. We cannot compartmentalize ourselves out of the reality of life. U.S. Customs and Border Protection is the federal law enforcement agency tasked with overseeing the entrance of people and goods through U.S. ports of entry, including airports. It claims to be uniquely situated to deter and disrupt human trafficking and is one of the 4 primary U.S. agencies tasked with enforcing federal anti-trafficking law. But here's the thing. I've experienced this myself. I've been waived through customs, especially when my children were younger. I'm an animal lover. those who have been around here for a while, I am an animal lover. Okay, I really am through and through, tried and true. Okay, so my children have always been raised around animals. We've always had pets. All of the things. And there have been times where drug dogs have been around, and people have looked at we don't want to spoof the kids. Go past. Fortunately, I'm not a nefarious person. I was just trying to get my kids in and out of the country, just trying to, get them to take them to go visit family, broaden their horizons, stuff like that. But things like this happen. There's one particular time, and I've told this story before to people, where only one time, one employee at an airport did things properly. They stopped me and my children. We were coming through, took our information, and started just casually talking, said one child's name. And who are you traveling with, sweetie? Oh, and who's that? Oh, okay. Said another child's name to see if they, recognize the names that they're being called, if this is really their name, who they're traveling with, if there's any hesitation, any nervousness. This is what they're supposed to be doing. One person. And on this trip, we were on our way back home. We had 2 connecting flights each. Getting there, getting back. No one had checked. No one had checked. In July 2019, federal prosecutors in New York indicted Epstein on charges of sex trafficking minors as young as 14 in New York and Palm Beach, Florida. Now, we do know from the files that have been made somewhat fully public, the youngest victims were 9 years old. Following Epstein's death by suicide in jail in August 2019, the Attorney General of the U.S. Virgin Islands, an unincorporated territory of the U.S. that includes St. Thomas and Epstein's private islands, Little St. James and Great St. James, filed suit against his estate, alleging that Epstein trafficked and sexually abused women and underage girls on the private islands using private planes, helicopters, boats, and automobiles to transport victims to, from, and within the Virgin Islands. No CBP officer was ever charged. The Guardian has not seen any evidence to suggest that CBP officers had direct knowledge or involvement in Epstein's crimes. And that's another thing that I have noticed over the years in following the victims' testimonies, looking at different interviews, different documents, and everything that have become public, and different court records that have become public. Epstein was good at compartmentalizing people away from what was going on. This is why I said earlier in the week that there's going to be if done properly, just like what's going on in Great Britain right now, multiple investigations into multiple things. I cannot think of the news outlet. I'm sorry. Yes, I can. It was MS Now. It was MS Now who incorrectly spoke because they were like, oh yeah, this person was picked up, but not related to Epstein's crimes. Epstein's crimes are far more than just sex trafficking. He was far more than just a pedophile. He has financial crimes. He has so many other crimes. There's going to be multiple investigations and multiple things that multiple people will be taken down because of. I know that the most sensational part of this saga is the sex crimes. But there's so many more. So it's not unthinkable that, him becoming buddy with Border Patrol officers, them not knowing anything else. They're just thinking, I guess I could get in trouble because he is breaking these laws regarding, the rules and regulations of crisscrossing the border. They weren't thinking of anything else. Because let's face it, every career field, every job type that there is someone or someones that are turning a blind eye to some rule breaking that they think is minor, that they don't think that the person that they're breaking the rules for is doing anything nefarious. Like, by this point in time, many people know the rules and regulations surrounding buddy passes that airline employees get. And now we're seeing videos of people like, well, why'd they do this? And this person, they didn't assume that person was going to do that. And technically, that person doesn't fall into the category that they should have given a buddy pass to, but they still did. There's a cashier right now that's pretending that ain't their auntie that they're ringing out, and they're not ringing out every 3 to 4 business items, honey. Not condoning it, not saying it's right, but I live in reality. And once again, not justifying anything in the realm of Epstein. We have to look at things through the realm of reality and not compartmentalize ourselves out of it. And we don't need to jump to conclusions and demonize people who don't need to be demonized. And we need to make sure people are charged with the crimes that they actually committed to guarantee the most amount of prosecutions and convictions possible. You with me? You with me? The FBI interviewed Rauch and subpoenaed credit reports about him and 3 other CBP officers, but it is not clear whether the investigation went any further. The release of the government's investigative files on Epstein has been delayed. Redactions are inconsistent, and it is not clear how many more files will be made public. And see, this is the thing. This is why other countries are able to make moves that we're not. We are so focused on the sex, until now, nobody's following the other crimes and the other pieces of the puzzle that the DOJ didn't focus on, because they're focused on keyword searches. And we already know this iteration of the U.S. federal government is heavily relied upon poorly programmed AI to do the vast majority of their work. Rauch acknowledged interacting with Epstein in the course of his employment, visiting Epstein's island and being investigated by the FBI. He disputed many of the details contained in FBI and CBP documents. In emails with The Guardian, he characterized the FBI investigation as a wild goose chase and said, "All my encounters were of a business nature. I never witnessed anything remotely related to trafficking." Once again, I can believe this. Epstein has a long-standing history of keeping, especially those in politics, those in law enforcement, involved in the judiciary, close but at arm's length. Like, I might need you to get me out of a pickle, but I don't need you to know what's in the pickle jar. Epstein emailed and texted with CBP officers, invited them to his island, visited with them at the airport, and frequently sought to determine who was going to be on duty when he was traveling through STT, the release files show. Some officers received financial advice, others small gifts and employment opportunities. Told you. One officer was invited to perform the steel pan drums on Little St. James on multiple occasions. Epstein tasked his assistant with helping another with an interest in accounting to find mentorship. The agent solicited Epstein for a hard money loan, though he told the Guardian the loan never materialized. Here's the thing, and before you go, but they were invited to the island. Y'all ever heard of plausible deniability? There was someone that I know that frequently would invite people over to their home. They would host different things. They presented themselves as the bee's knees. Okay, the greatest, nicest person to ever do anything, honey. Okay, that they was just the greatest. What wasn't nobody greater than them? You hear me? But they did it because they knew eventually they would be exposed. Either their death would expose them, or somebody would finally speak up to them being abusive. No different than Epstein. If I invite you to my island and then I make it seem like, oh, this is just the ultimate party place for adults. We just get together and talk finances because I'm a financier. Oh, you can come and, oh, you can hobnob. And it's a way to make adults feel like a kid in a candy shop. Oh, I got to party with such and such and such and such. I got blah, blah, blah business advice from insert here. So when it comes down to it, why do you think so many people are like, oh, I don't believe that about such and such? They were so great. This is why so many people have a hard time reconciling with their favorite person being a monster. So, that is what happens. It happens every single day. This is why so many of Epstein's victims in the beginning were focused on battling with each other, being in competition with each other, and then feeling sorry for him. He knew how to play him. But this is where we will stick a pin in things for today. We will continue with more updates as far as Hillary Clinton and her deposition. Whatever I find out, I will update regularly, and I will add to the Epstein Maxwell playlist here on YouTube. Other than that, I will see you all today at 3:30 Eastern, 2:30 Central for the Taz Effect Daily News in a way you didn't know you could use. And today at 5 p.m., Candace Owens has a new series. So I will be picking up the Kirk Conspiracy series, and we will be going over The Bride of Charlie, which is the title of Candace Owens' new series. If you are not subscribed, make sure that you are, and turn on notifications so that you can be up to date and notified every time there's something new to see over here. But I will see you all later. Be kind to yourself and be good to those around you.